Hello, everybody. I'm back. So before I begin, I want to let people know that as I'm reading this book, if I come across any kind of errors, I am going to note them in my copy of the final product. And this is to ensure that I can go back and I can make the changes because I am resubmitting this manuscript, and this time I'm going to update the summary with updated with new updated with changes. So that way, if people are looking at like, oh, okay, the author noticed that there was errors and she fixed them. So I'm hoping that the fixes will work and it's a much better book. All right. So chapter 2. The call came in about an hour ago. The man told the driver of a black Buick the moment he opened the door. Any idea who it is? He asked the man, showing the officer guarding the scene his badge. I'm sorry, Detective Hawk, but the body is too badly burned to identify who it is. We're going to have to use dental records to do a proper identification. The remains looked like someone had stuck a dead pig and roasted it. The jaw had a permanent scream that Detective Hawk was sure he would never get out of his mind. The medical examiner thinks the victim died around 6 tonight, he told Hawk, and nobody called it in until around 9. Why so long? He asked him. There are no windows facing the street. The only ones are in the businesses, so no one saw anything or heard anything. Probably have their blasted video games going. Well, the weatherman did tell people to stay inside, he reminded Hawk. Too bad we can't take that advice, Hawk said, the cold managing to get through his coat and right on his skin. God, I hate living near the ocean. Want us to move the body, Detective? One of the crime scene men asked him. Yes, please, he said, and let me know anything that you find out. He nodded, making the call. Why do you think the fire lasted that long? Hawk looked around the car and said, Do you smell that? Smell what? Gasoline, was Hawk's answer. The victim was burned in her car. I want to know whether she was dead or alive when the match was struck. How do you know it's a woman? Hawk looked at the man and said, I have a really good hunch. Excuse me. A sharp voice broke Barbara away from the magazine she was reading. It was afternoon, and there was only 3 people in the shop. The voice didn't belong to any of the 3. The voice belonged to a woman she had seen several times since moving back. She had short, white hair, more age lines than she did, and signs that aging hadn't done an excellent job on her body. It had been an odd day, with the burnt-out remains of a car, thankfully with nobody inside, and at least 10 cruisers keeping most traffic away. What can I do for you? Barbara asked her. Well, the Enchanted Reed is closed. I don't know why. Our book club needs a meeting place. You have more than enough room, and I was wondering if we could hijack a piece of your store and have our book meeting. Barbara could tell her no, but again, she might lose out on business. Book clubs were the most important of the ones she had been a guest at. A couple of her books had been the subject of book club discussions. Sorry about the unevenness of that. Sorry about that, guys. Of course, she said, giving the woman her usual smile. How many members? 11, she answered. And it might be good if you joined us for one of our meetings. Barbara was a bit shocked and asked, Why? Because you're an author, that's why, she answered, as though that answered all the questions in the world. I'll see if I can make it, Barbara promised. The small group of book lovers, the kittens were keeping them company, took almost all the chairs that didn't have a warm butt in them, and opened up their e-books. What are they doing? Sam asked her. Book club meeting, Barbara answered. It seems the Enchanted Reed is closed. Sam gave Barbara an odd look and said, That's odd. I'm going to agree, she said, so I told her that they could meet here. Let's hope nothing happened, he said. After Barbara closed for the night, she headed home. She saw that the police had taken away the car, and she fed her little ones. She then pulled out her book and opened it to the last page she had been on. Halfway the chapter, her phone rang. Who's calling me? Barbara wondered, and she picked it up. Hello? Barbara, this is Justin, the voice of her publisher said. Odd, she wasn't writing anything. What's wrong? The Waterhorse School Board is having a meeting tomorrow night, he told her. One of the booksellers, Misty Hart, called that number we set up and told us that they're voting to remove 11 books from the school libraries, including yours. Barbara stared at the wall and then said, What? Why? Why do you think, he answered, his tone sharp and to the point. I'm telling you, these book bans are getting so stupid. I'm going to agree, Barbara said. Brainwashed idiots are always supporting things that are unreasonable. Most book bans were nothing short of wrong and unreasonable. I'll be there, Barbara promised. Give me the time. He did, and she hung up. After the man left with a couple of Stephen King novels in paperback the following day, she told Sally about the school board meeting. I know how much you hate that, Sally said, knowing that Barbara had spoken out against these things several times over the years. She was vocal during Banned Book Week. It makes no sense, Barbara told her. I mean, what are books doing that are so harmful? Making children into better people, Sam answered, and heaven knows that some people don't like that. And we wouldn't want that. Barbara ate lunch at the Captain's Inn, ordering chili and a tall milkshake. Not the kind of weather for one of those, Tommy said. Sometimes you need something cold in your life, Barbara told him, which sounded odd even to her. Sometimes, he agreed, and went to help another customer. Barbara arrived an hour after her store closed. She didn't participate in school board meetings because she had no reason to. She didn't have a child, and the only thing that she had worried about at the time was making it to a book signing on time. Things were a lot different now, which made people like Barbara fearful. She sat down in the second row and watched other people walk in and take their seats. So I'm going to pause there for a little bit. So she says she doesn't have a child. Well, she does have a daughter, but we're talking about she doesn't have a child in that school district. Everybody is kind of confused by that. Okay, everyone, this is a meeting of the Waterhorse School Board. We are here to discuss different matters for those who haven't attended one of our meetings. The first one on the board is removing 11 books from Peacock High School. Yes, I did choose the name Peacock High School. I love writing books. We will discuss it and then vote. And then move on to other matters that I'm sure that half of those here don't care about. Barbara had a feeling that he was right. The 11 books are The Blood Chamber by Barbara Market, and her 7 other books in her young adult series are titled Blood and Bones, The Girl in the Window, The Banshee Screamed, The Boy That Went Across Time, Marty, Sam, and Amelia, The Dead King, and The Vampire Princess. Barbara crossed her arms and gave the board member a look that made young men run. She didn't have control over where her books ended up. All she did was write them, and her publisher published them. The last 3 books are I Want to Be a Girl by Amelia Lionheart, How the Body Works by Dr. Mike Vinewood, and Charlie Goes to Washington by William Locke. Barbara knew William Locke. He was a good author, and the book was about his friend's son, Charlie, who went to Washington to visit the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. How that book was terrible, she couldn't figure it out. Then the board listed everything parents and non-parents of students had to say about the books. She felt like screaming when they mentioned that books like The Banshee Screams and The Girl in the Window were too gory. They were horror books, for God's sake. We now open the floor. No, I did not write we open the door. Oh man, Hermione, you really need to stick with what's written on the paper. We now open the floor to comments. You'll be limited to 5 minutes to make comments and arguments, he told them. Barbara stood up, walked over to the podium, and stood before a group of people who didn't care that they were repeating history every time they and people like them wanted to control what people could or couldn't read. My name is Barbara Market. I am the author of the 8 books parents and non-parents are trying to ban. I was a teacher for 6 years and went to college to become one, because I believe that the power of learning and the energy that books can bring is vital to our democracy. Reading is a way to get the mind off of the troubles that they are having by reading about the problems of others and seeing that their lives are not as bad as the person that they are reading about. My father barely managed to be old enough to serve in the last World War, and the things he said and the things and others like him heard about what Hitler had done to control the masses have made me believe that the road that this country is taking is history repeating itself. When we ban books, we ban ideas. We ban free thinking. We allow thought police, suppression, and oppression. Those who support book bans and the removal of titles just because they don't like the content have only one vision for this country. A vision where they control what you say, what you think, and what you can do. They control you. I wrote the books that are being targeted because I was in love with old horror stories that scared me as a child. The books that I read that led me down the path to become a horror writer were allowed by my parents. They didn't tell me I couldn't read them, and they wouldn't think of telling other parents their children couldn't. None of the people who want to take these books out are parents of any of the future children I may have or adopt. Excellent books like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys have led me to write mystery books with strong characters who solve crimes using their wit and nerves. Banning these books is wrong. They are against everything this country stands for and against what the founders of this country stood for. My words may still need to change your mind. Let's see here. Okay. I'm going to have to correct that line. But when the things you enjoy and know aren't harmful, they are taken away. Then maybe you will understand that what you do now will return to you in time. And then she walked back to her seat. Among some clapping, she had said her bit. She just hoped someone understood her words, though she didn't have any hope for that. Not to her surprise, the board voted that the only book that wouldn't be banned was a book by the doctor. She left feeling as though nothing was done. Sorry to hear that it didn't work out, Sally told her when she came in the following day. Yeah, it seems the board already knew how they would vote, Barbara told her, shaking her head in disgust. It just really makes me sad that the students won't be able to read my books, though I did see a couple of adults pretty mad at the whole vote. Must be the parents of the actual students, Sam told her, the ones that want to be the ones to control what their children read, but not control over others. Thank God we know that those kinds of parents exist. The rest of the day, minus lunch, was busy with people who needed help, including a woman who needed a book on cities of medieval Europe. Madame Hawthorne is a great author when it comes to cities that were around during the High Middle Ages, Barbara told her, showing her the cover. She traveled there several times over the last 30 years. This might just do it, she said, taking it. I need something to help me finish my report. What are you taking? Roman history, she answered. Yes, I know that reporting on the medieval period isn't the same as the Roman period, but I do whatever the assignments Professor Williams wants done. I can imagine that he doesn't take no for an answer regarding his assignments. You would be correct, she said. Thanks. And she headed to for the desk so that Sally could ring her order up. Detective Hawk walked into the ME's office, known as the medical examiner, for people that don't know, otherwise known as the Carnival of Horrors, and saw the ME loading a dead body or client into one of the large rooms that lined the north side of the room. Glad you could make it to all the fun, she told him, her assistant taking the instruments and putting them on the side to be cleaned later. So what do you know about our burn victim? He asked her. Well, her lungs had ash in them, she said, meaning that she was still alive when she started to burn. So she was knocked out, placed in the car, and burned while still alive. Correct, she said. And are you sure that you're in the right job? He had to laugh and said, Yeah, I'm sure. So what knocked her out? Strangulation. But not enough to kill her, the ME reported and handed him her findings. I ran her dental records and it came back as belonging to Misty Hart. We haven't notified her husband that we found her. This is a pretty long chapter. That's something that I do, he told her. So, do you think a woman did this? Detective, I'm hurt. Why do you think a woman did this? Because she wasn't large, he answered. The answer is that it could have been either a man or a woman. However, the amount of rage that probably went into this killing tells me that a man did it. I think that I should find out if anyone hated Miss Hart bad enough to kill her. And while I do think that you're right about who killed her, I want to leave all of my options open. She crossed her arms and said, I tell you what, if I turn out to be right, then you owe me a lobster dinner. Challenge accepted, he said, and then he left. Barbara couldn't believe it when she saw the news that Missy Hart had been found dead. Something told her that the burned-out car and Misty were connected. Still, as much as the woman had made her angry when she threw the book at her cats, no one deserved to die like that. Of course, something told her that someone would blame her for this. You don't write as many mystery books without picking up a few things from all the police officers that you talked to for your readers. She returned to her breakfast and tried to put Misty's death behind her. When the store opened at 9, everyone that was anyone came to talk to Barbara about what would happen to all of Misty's stock. It was clear that Misty had many volumes that people wanted, but as it was closed, her widower had most likely kept. But, oh yeah, I made a mistake. But it was clear her widow had most likely kept the store closed. So it was clear, not but as it was clear. Oh man. She did have the answer to those questions. Of course, she found the whole line of conversation to be highly distasteful. Do you think she was murdered? Sam asked. Honey, I doubt that she climbed into a car and set the whole thing on fire, Daniel told him. She probably was dead before she was burned. Can we please talk about something else? Sally begged. This talk is not good for my stomach. Who isn't good for anyone's stomach? I agree, Barbara said. The last thing we need is for people to think that one of us had done it. You don't think they'll think that you did it? Barbara sighed and said, Yes, that's what they will think. But remember that I screamed at her when she threw that book at my cats. But that doesn't mean that you did it, Daniel pointed out, and Barbara knew he had a point. And I understand that, but I've written mystery books for over 10 years, and it's all bound to come out that they think that I did it. Then they're stupid. Barbara made it a point to never accuse the police of being stupid. In her line of work, it was all about respect. Still, it did concern her that some of them might think she did it. Writing down people on paper was one thing. Being the one accused was something else. "I'm sorry for your loss," Detective Hawk told Mr. Hart after he had told him that the burned body was that of his wife. "Sorry doesn't bring her back," he told Hawk, "and you know it." "Of course I do," Hawk told him, hoping that he would feel at ease with him telling him that he understood. And naturally he did. "So what was your wife like?" Mr. Hart laughed and said, "Hard-headed, determined, and a real sweetheart. She started the bookstore when she was in her 30s. She wanted a place where people could come and get the perfect book and have the perfect adventure. However, others opened, and some people who had once visited our store went to theirs." "How did she feel about that?" he asked, writing down what Mr. Hart had told him. "Mad," he answered. "Couldn't blame her for feeling that way. And then a couple years ago, she started hearing about book bans and censorship. That also got her mad, but I told her that she couldn't do anything about it. The children could come to her shop and read as many of the books that the children could come to her shop and read as many of the books that other adults didn't want them to read. And then she found out about a group that battled these things. It's like 21 minutes into this reading. Got political when it came to her beloved books. Went to board meetings. She started calling board members Nazis, got thrown out for calling them what she believed they were, and it gained her some following. I can imagine they didn't like being called such a charged word." Mr. Hart snorted and said, "If you call someone that now, all they do is laugh at you." She believed all that laughter hid the fact that she knew what they were. It wouldn't surprise me if one of them killed her. "Did she have any enemies?" Hawk asked him. "Some book owners hated her for what she said to them, though I doubt they killed her." "And are you sure of that?" He looked at him and said, "Look, we all argue, fight, do all sorts of things. But when it comes to that business, we care about it. We care about everything that we carry and the bonds that we forge. Even the new girl, even though Missy threw a book at her cats, I doubt she had any hate for my wife, and I've seen hate, Detective, and what she was doing wasn't hate. Shock and anger that someone would do that to her pets is one thing. Using that anger to kill someone who had done nothing but good for our town is another." "What's her name?" "Barbara Market," he answered. "That New York Times best-selling author. The name of her business? The Book Nook," Mr. Hart answered. Detective Hawk had never been inside the former clothing store, but even his wife loved Barbara Market. Her books were almost the only things she had ever read. This made the whole thing a lot harder. Still, if the former author had killed Misty and he could get a confession and evidence, then he would win the bet. When he walked in, he saw wall-to-wall bookshelves, several reading tables, stairs leading to more books, and a counter with a pair of unusual cats. He knew the breed since he had read the Cat Who series when he was younger. A man was behind the counter, and he looked up when the shop bell rang, and the door passed under it. "I'm Detective Hawk," he told the man showing his badge. "I want to have a word with Mrs. Market." The man went pale and said, "I'll let her know that you're here." Hawk nodded, and the man vanished somewhere. The cats gave him a look that reminded him of his disapproving mother. "Good afternoon, Detective," a woman's voice said, and he looked up to see a woman in her 40s approach him. She extended her hand, and he shook it. "So you're the author my wife can't get enough of," he told her. "Well, I'll take that as a flattering opinion," he said, smiling at him. "So what brings you here?" "Can we talk in your office?" he asked her. "Of course," she said, and he followed her towards the back. Mrs. Market's office was cozy and filled with books. A reader was on the desk, and he wondered what she had been doing before he arrived. She sat down and looked at him. "I'm here because I'm looking into anyone who might have wanted Mrs. Hart dead," he told her, all business. "I'm sure that you heard that her body was found a day ago." "Yes, and I must say I don't like what happened to her. She was sour, of course, at all the bookshops that had opened, but she was also a friend and ally of the very business that we hold dear." "What do you mean she was sour?" "That's my word. It doesn't mean anything to anyone who doesn't know why I use it. The point I'm making is that Mrs. Hart had made it clear on several occasions, and I got this from other sellers, she didn't like them coming into town and trying to take her customers away. However, when it came to what we love the most, she was able to put the flaming torch down and do what needed to be done." "And what was that?" "Protecting books and people's right to read them," Barbara answered. "So I mourn the loss of her, and I do hope that you find out who killed her." Oh, he had a good idea who had done it. Still, he stayed silent. "Where were you between 6 and 9 on August 10th? He asked her. I should change that to December. Oh, God. Yes, I'll just change that to December. "December 10th, he asked her. "On my way home," Barbara answered. "I close the store at 5, and it takes almost half an hour to not only check the till, but put away books that customers have left behind and put the cats in their carriers. So I left with the other employees around 6. Sally was having some issues with a weekend outing that she was having with her father. That took about 20 minutes to talk her through. And you know exactly how long?" "Sir, I was once a mystery writer," Barbara said, "as well as a horror writer. I have learned a great deal about understanding somewhat the flow of time. Sally went one way, and Sam and Daniel, who live in the same house, went with me. They lived 2 houses away, and I saw them heading for their front door and headed for mine. I didn't leave until morning." "However, no one saw you go in." "No, they didn't," Barbara confessed, "but I know that I didn't kill her." "And why's that?" he asked her. "Because I take medication for my bad back and knee. If I don't take them the moment that I get back home, then I'm in screaming agony all night. Trust me, no one is worth that much pain. Not even a woman named Misty Hart." As he got up, Barbara said, "I forgot to ask, how did she die?" "Burned," he answered. "If I need you to answer any more questions, I know where to find you." And he walked out of her office. "I tell you, it's all those mystery and horror books that she's written," Hawk's friend Paul told him. "I mean, it isn't normal. Do you think that she might have had a hand in killing her?" "Of course," Paul said. "I mean, she moves in, she's a best-selling author, and the victim gets all mad about it. I got calls from people that told me the victim threw a book at those flea bags." "And why did she do that?" Hawk asked. "Because the victim hates cats. I'm telling you, she's as guilty as sin." A female officer shook her head. "You had better be careful," another officer said. "If you arrest her, have her tried, and it turns out she's innocent, she will have so many lawyers at your front door that you will be selling your soul to pay them off." Hawk sighed and said, "I doubt I'll have that problem. I suspect that she had a hand in the victim's death. When I have her arrested, I'll be the one smiling. I know there's no way she's innocent, and even if she was, we're talking about a mystery writer here. There's no way that she's smarter than me." "I'll put that down as your famous last words." Hawk ignored her. "Are you all right?" Barbara Sorry, are you alright, Sam asked Barbara shortly after the detective left. I don't know, Barbara confessed. I mean, I suspect someone would come over and talk to me, but I didn't think that it would be so soon. I'm sure he talked to other booksellers, he said. So what are we going to do? Barbara looked at him and asked, What do you mean? Well, we should do something for Misty, he suggested. She was a book warrior, and she was the one who called in about the school board meeting, and even though you both didn't get along, I think it would be nice. I agree with him, boss, Sally said. I mean, she was an important fixture in the community, and I think her widower would love it if we did something to remember her by. I'll make some calls, Barbara told him, knowing Sam's idea was good. When five came around, she locked the door and spent 20 minutes counting the till. Once locked in the safe, she turned off all the lights and left the store, heading for her car. As she drove home, she felt like she was being followed. Looking through her rearview mirror, she saw a red vehicle tailing her. Something told her this wasn't Detective Hawk's car. She pulled into her drive and got her weapon of choice ready. All of her senses went on high alert. There was no way she was going to end up like Misty Hart. She slowly got out of the car and locked it. Suddenly, something went around her neck, making her body jerk forward. The moment that thing went around her body went into action. She suddenly stabbed behind her and must have caught something because the figure screamed in pain. Something dropped to the ground, and a metal clanking told her that her weapon was now on the floor, or on the. Oh, for a second I thought I said flower. Okay, everybody, I am working way too much. Now it was on the ground. She looked to see that the figure had a black ski mask on, and it ran away. She ran after it, but it was already in the car and driving away. She called the police and didn't touch anything. God, I hate the dark. Hawk heard one of the photographers tell him when he came out of the car. He had heard that Mrs. Market had made a Grammerly, why me? Why did you do this to me? It's supposed to be 911, not 1. Okay. This is why I'm not putting this back to the Grammarly. No, it's not happening. A 911 call, telling the dispatcher that she had been attacked. He took a photo of the weapon that had blood on it, now a more copper-looking color. It was being bagged as evidence. Armed all the time? He asked Barbara. Want me to be dead? She asked him. I used to live in Chicago, so you must have something to defend yourself, or become another statistic. We took photos of the wound, he told Hawk, and we'll compare them to the one on the deceased's body. He nodded, and the men left. So, where are your friends at 2 houses down? He asked her. Dinner, she answered. So, wise one, do you want to know if it was a man or a woman? He took the pad and said, So, was it a man or a woman? Man, wearing a black ski mask and matching black clothing, and I didn't hear him come up behind me. She was telling It told me that he knows how to keep his footsteps silent. Most likely he's gone through some military training or is an expert in tracking prey. Human prey in this case. Thanks for the information, he said. She looked at him and said, Oh, so that's all I get. Thanks for the information. Oh, did I add that he was driving a red car? And about 30 of them are in this town, he said. Try and not play Nancy Drew. She stuck her tongue out at him. A banging on the door pulled Barbara away from the pad she had once used to write down her thoughts on whatever book she was writing. She thought it was a fitting use to something that had helped her out in the past. She went over and looked through the peephole. Boss woman, Sam's voice said, and she opened the door to see Sam and his partner standing there. with Sally right behind them, both sporting worried and terrified looks. "We got your call and cut short the dessert," he told her. "Thanks," Barbara said, allowing them to come in. "Oh, God, look at your neck," Sally said. "Did they give you something for it?" "I didn't go to the hospital, Sal, and I've taken the medication that I have already." She sat down at her desk and looked at her friends. "Do you think this was the same one that killed Misty?" Daniel asked, fear still in his voice. "Most likely," Barbara said, "but he wasn't counting on me having something to defend myself. I got him good, so all the police have to do is find someone that has a wound, or someone comes in with a wound, and they'll have their killer." "Come on, you've written over a dozen mystery books. Is it ever that simple?" Sally asked her. "Of course not," she answered. "That's why I'm going to find out who is doing this." All three looked at each other. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Daniel asked her. "Of course it is," said Sally. "I mean, this person tried to kill me, so I say that..." Sorry, this was Sally, not Barbara. I wrote, "Of course not." Sorry. "Of course it is," said Sally. "I mean, this person tried to kill her, so I say that it's a good idea." I'm sorry, I've had a long day, people. "Well, we're going to help," Sam said. "I mean, I almost lost my boss tonight. I take that as a personal insult." "It's not going to be safe," Barbara told him, "and people will lie or have things they don't want people to discover. Or you have to worry about a certain detective finding out that you're messing with something that he's... Detective finding out that you're messing in something that he's sure you have no right to be involved in." Yeah, I wrote it correctly on the paper. "I'm worried about the detective when the time comes," she said. "What I want to know is this. What did Misty do to get targeted? Because I doubt that this was just some random attack. I think it was planned for months, maybe weeks, and then he took the opportunity and attacked her the same way that he attacked me. And he did tell you that Misty was burned." "Correct." "Where did he get the accelerant?" Barbara asked. "The what?" "What was being used to set her car on fire," Sally explained. "Who hated her enough to kill her? What other secrets does the victim have? And is there a motive other than revenge for the killing?" "Do you think the husband did it?" Sam asked. "I doubt it," Barbara said. From how he's acting, he loved her enough to keep me from calling the police." "So someone else did it, and then decided to target you. What have you done to get this man's attention?" "Nothing, unless he hates half of my books and wants to silence me," Barbara said, though she doubted that was the reason. "Though I will tell you that I had some hate mail in the past." All three looked at her, and Sam asked, "What kind of hate mail?" "Like when you kill off a characters people love, and they find out where you live and send you hate mail, or dead animals? I've gotten those as well." "What kind of hate mail?" Sam repeated. "The ones with a pipe bomb attached to them," Barbara finally answered. "So since Mrs. Market is the only person of the victim still alive, I called the Chicago Police Department about her. She's had 11 bomb threats, 57 pieces of hate mail, and 11 visits from the bomb squad for 4 pipe bombs that had been left at her front door. I doubt Miss Market is a victim." "You don't think she staged it?" the female officer said. "Anything's possible," he said. "Well, until you have actual evidence and not assumptions, then we treat her as though she's another victim of a psycho that has a thrill-killing women that spends way too much time around books," his captain said, giving Hawk a look that told the detective that he was barking up the wrong tree. "Are the kitty's ears at the lab?" "Yes, sir," the female officer told him. "Good," he said. "Hopefully we can match it to a perp that has a rap sheet. So back to what I was saying. She has all of these bomb threats with actual bombs along with it, and hate mail." "Gross," she said. "They sent her actual dead animal parts?" "Any idea why they did this?" Huck's partner, who had just returned from Vacation asked. She killed off a character that everyone loved. Mrs. Market explained at the time that when she was writing the series, she intended for the person to die. She didn't count on people loving him enough to be upset and try to blow up her house. Apartment, the captain clarified. If any of those bombs had exploded, it would have killed a lot more than a hated author. Do you think that the killer killed the victim to get to Mrs. Market? The female officer asked him. Don't know, Hawk said. What I want to know is what happened to Mr. Market. Let's just focus on finding the one that killed. Let's just focus on finding the one that killed one and almost added another to his kill count, the captain asked him. Sir, if Mrs. Market had a hand in her husband's death, if he's even dead, the police would have already had her charged, and she would be sitting on death row. Now we focus on who did these acts and get them arrested. Yes, sir, Hawk said, and the captain returned to his office. Got you there, his partner said, grinning at him. Shut up, Hawk growled, clearly showing his dislike for what the captain wanted to do. After all that happened last night, you want to try and find out who killed Misty, Sam said, and Barbara knew he wasn't happy with her decision. Barbara, writing mysteries is one thing, but trying to solve them, that's different. I know what I'm doing, she said, crossing her arms and giving him a stern look, and I know for a fact that Hawk will try and find anything to have me arrested, so I need to prove I didn't do it to him. Hold on a second. So I need to prove that I didn't do it to her. And the only way to do that is to find the person that did kill her. I think it's a good idea, but I'm going to agree with Sam that this is dangerous. I understand that, Barbara said, but it has to be done. So the first thing that we need to do is find out if anyone has a grudge against her. She was the only bookseller in town until the others arrived, so she's bound to have a grudge against them. One of them could have easily killed her so that they didn't have to put up with her. What is the point in killing off your competition? Daniel asked. All it does is land you into trouble. I doubt they're thinking about that when they bump someone off. Barbara snickered and Sally exclaimed, Bump someone off like the mob? Of course like the mob, Daniel stated. So, boss lady, we know that Misty was burned in her car, so how did it catch on fire? The only thing that could have burned her car like that, if that was her car, was gasoline. And I know this because I had to research for my third book. I was invited to the fire department training course and saw what gasoline did to things like cars. And even the past, and trust me, it is not something you ever want to see. So a killer who's walking around with a couple of plastic containers of gasoline. Here's a wild theory, Sally said. What if the killer didn't have it, but she did? Her car, if, like you said, that was her car, then she might have had it in the trunk. Barbara could see where she was going with this, and Barbara had to admit that she didn't like the image that she was getting. If Misty had the gasoline in her trunk, then she was here to burn something down, and that something looked too much like her business. Had Misty hated her so much that throwing a book at her cats wasn't enough? Was arson the way that she would drive Barbara out of business? Do you think the police might know this? Sam wondered. I don't know, Barbara said, but that's why they have labs. I'm sure they'll run some tests and it will come back that someone was right about what they suspect was used to set the fire, and then they can find out if she used her credit card to buy the gasoline. Or cash, Sam suggested. I know that cash can't be traced, especially if it's a normal transaction, Barbara pointed out. Not when cards are easier to trace and use as evidence. So if she used cash to buy the gasoline, she was determined that no one would find out it was her. Barbara nodded. That's cold, man. That's cold. Barbara decided not to tell them that only some plans were as foolproof as you might think. Besides, because in this day and age, there are always someone who could see anything. During her break, Barbara, sorry, ugh. During my break, I will talk to some of the other booksellers, find out if they knew anyone who wanted her dead, and I will watch their reaction to having a remembrance gathering for her. Their body language will tell me much more than their words ever will. Be careful, Sally warned. Barbara nodded, grateful that she had people that worried about her. Well, let's open up, she told them, and Sam turned the sign and unlocked the door. All morning, customers commented about the wrap around Barbara's neck. Of course, she told the truth of where it had come from. Someone tried to kill you? Said the man, shocked in his voice. Thankfully, I had something to keep that from happening, Barbara assured him. I hope the police find out who did it, he said. Me too, agreed Barbara, and as noon came around, the crowds all slowly started to thin out. Well, you were right about it being gasoline, his partner, Detective Miller, said, handing him the report. We checked Miss Margaret's credit card, and she bought gas from the service station to fill up her car. The attendant on duty told me that Miss Margaret never fills any plastic gas cans with gas. She has one of those hybrid cars. Well, she's got the money to buy them, he pointed out. So, that means that she didn't have it on her, he said. Could have brought them somewhere else. You think she did it? Yes, and don't tell the captain, he told him. I don't want to have to visit the principal's office. Don't worry, I won't tell so. However, the same attendant told me that the victim, Mrs. Hart, bought 4 plastic containers and paid in cash for the fuel and the containers the day before her unexpected barbecue. 4? Yep, Miller said. He commented to her, and she snapped at him, telling him to mind his business. Great, he said, throwing his pen. So it looks as though the victim intended to burn something down. Want to take a good guess who it probably was? Our cat-loving Mrs. Market bookstore. Hawk said. I think that's an excellent guess, Miller said, and probably thought she could get away with it until someone decided to use her weapon of choice to have a nice little misty barbecue. Alright. Oh, man. So, that is Chapter 2. There were several mistakes in Chapter 2. I will be correcting them tonight, and then I'm going to be working on my other my proof copy. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.